Next time, after beating Volwhite 2 Redux with hardcore Nuzlocke rules twice with relative ease, it's time for a real challenge on this channel. Pokemon Radical Red Time Baby, and this is on hardcore mode, and what? I'm getting repeatedly destroyed. This is the hardest game I've ever played. It's even harder than Emerald Kaizo. Is there any hope of me beating this game? I'm gonna have to go all out for this. Let's find out. Pokemon Radical Red on hardcore mode for a hardcore Nuzlocke is literally the hardest game I've ever played. To put that into perspective, I've Nuzlocked Vintage White with ease, which is another very difficult ROM hack in the Nuzlocke community, and Vintage White has nothing on Radical Red. I've had an easier time playing Emerald Kaizo than I have with this game. That just goes to show what kind of challenge this is. Pokemon Challenges and Wolfey are two people who have beaten the earlier versions of Radical Red, but those were the Baby Core Easy versions. The current 2.3 Hardcore mode version is at least twice as hard as the versions that they beat. This challenge is just on a whole nother level. There is a humongous amount of RNG throughout the game. It is almost literally impossible to make the boss battles riskless. There is always a chance that you will just automatically lose. Especially because the AI doesn't fully make sense. There's a lot of things about the AI in this game that we just do not know. This game is absolutely not for the faint of heart. You will need docs, calcs, you will need strategies, and you will need to just test and bang your head against the wall over and over to slowly refine your strats. This game is absolutely wild. In this video I will be attempting hardcore Nuzlocke. I will say, when I first started playing this game, I could not even get past Brock to save my life. I was getting absolutely destroyed. I've gotten better at this game. I at least know how to get past Brock with relative ease. It's still luck dependent, but I can at least get past Brock. I will say, since making this video, I have had a lot more experience playing this game in my strategies, but this game is such a big learning curve and it just takes a long time for you to actually learn how to play it effectively. There are ways to get past a lot of the boss fights in this game, but you really need to know what you're doing. With that established, the rules are just going to be standard hardcore Nuzlocke rules. I will not be using the Dex Nav clause that a lot of other people use, though I did end up implementing it after this run, so keep that in mind. I probably will be doing more videos of this game in the future. If you're struggling with early game at least, you could learn something from this video. You could look at the strategies I use and maybe reset for the mons that I used. There are some good strats for Brock that could help you out if you're a newbie to this game. So, with that established, standard hardcore Nuzlocke rules, Radical Red hardcore mode, let's go. Okay, so start the run, and as you may know in hardcore, you're going to need some good encounters. You basically have to reset for certain encounters, unless you want to have a 90% lose rate to start the game. So I make a save state and I reset to get certain encounters, then I start a Nuzlocke. Now, probably the best encounter you could possibly get before the first boss fight would be Kricketot. It's such a good mon. Fully evolves at level 10, has Technician, incredible moveset and coverage. It's insane for basically every boss fight until Misty. Kricketune does fall off after Misty, but it could potentially carry you there, and you will see how I use it in this run. It's so good. The other mon that you will need is a Dark type. Now, for the other encounters, I get Poochyena. Now, you really want Poochyena or the Galarian Linoon. Alolan Raticate can work, but if it's got Hustle, it's unreliable. You need a Dark type, because if you do not have a Dark type, you literally have no way of countering Brock's Lunatone. Mightyena is the best early game mon, I would say, along with Kricketune. Great stats, evolves at level 16. Strong Jaw and Intimidate are both amazing. It gets Sucker Punch and Crunch in just really good coverage moves as well. This mon's incredible. I think Bulbasaur, Mightyena and Kricketune, those three can make early game so much easier for you, and I will show you some strats for them. The rest of the counters I did reset for, but ideally what you want is a good arc encounter. So for the other encounters I got Mienfoo, which is good when you evolve it. This thing can work for Brock, but because I already have Kricketune and Mightyena, I actually don't need this, so it basically does nothing until it evolves. That's a really big problem. A lot of mons in this game are basically going to be bench warmers until later on. Mons like Stunky, for example, they literally do nothing early game, so you need to be pretty careful for that. Next encounter I get is Hutu, and this does evolve at level 16. It's a pretty solid mon. As you will see, this is actually insane for Falkner, so that's really nice, but it's a bit mid. Like, Noctowl isn't that insane, but just because it's a fully evolved mon at level 16 is still pretty useful. The last encounter I get from my first batch is Yungoos, and this is actually a pretty good early game mon. Early game up until Misty, then it does fall off afterwards, but this is an arc encounter. To beat Brock, you need a counter for its Arcane, and Yungoos can beat it. It evolves at level 16 and gets Rock Tomb, has pretty solid stats for that point of the game. So these are my first 6 encounters. This is actually a pretty good encounter lineup. Mienfoo is the only mon that doesn't really do anything early game, but everything else is actually pretty important. So now we can actually start the run out. First up is Brendan, and really there's not much to say about Brendan. He's an easy fight. Just make sure you look at his moveset and you have something, which you almost always will. Meditite is hard coded to go for fake out turn 1, so you just play around that. Corphish can hit kind of hard, but Mightyena can just outmuscle it. Treecko you can beat with Ivysaur or Kricketune. I use Noctowl, it doesn't really matter. And Numel, well, it's a Numel. I'm sure you can deal with it. This is only the start. The next boss fight, things already start to escalate. The root boss, Bugcatcher Sammy, in this fight is really not nice. I hate this fight. I absolutely hate this fight. It's hard, but not that hard. You kind of get screwed over by bad RNG, but this fight is so tedious, and you will see why. So the strats, if you have Kricketot in Mightyena and Ivysaur core, the Fremon core that I recommend you reset for, there is a good strat you can do for this fight. It's like 90% guaranteed. So lead off Kricketune and go for Rock Tomb, then Bug Bite, and you will always beat this Kricketune unless you miss. This will bait in Dustox, and this will always go for Toxic. So what you do, on Toxic you switch in Ivysaur. Now Dustox will use its only attacking move, Psybeam, so you switch in your Dark type, Mightyena. Now it will always go for Toxic, so you switch in Ivysaur. Here I did misplay. I switched in Kricketune for some reason, which I was not supposed to do, and I got Toxic, which is really annoying. What you're supposed to do is you're supposed to switch between Ivysaur and Mightyena continuously until the Dustox just runs out of PP. Then when it runs out of PP, it's going to be no longer a problem. You only have to worry about the final Volbeat, which is a big issue. What you could do is, while the Dustox is out of PP, you could have Mightyena spam Bites, so you can hit the Volbeat when it comes in. The Volbeat is very problematic. It's Bug Electric with a pretty big stat buff, and it has Silver Wind. If it gets a Silver Wind boost, you could literally wipe it. Thankfully, Gumshoes was able to deal with it with Rock Tomb. Kricketune, if it's at good health, it can come in and then use Rock Tomb as well, but that could potentially go down to a crit, so just make sure you have an answer for Volbeat and you'll basically be fine. This fight can literally take 10 minutes with a stalling strat. It is not fun. But, yep, after that we can just carry on. Now next up is Diglett Cave. There are good encounters, but there's also some really bad ones too. I get Alolan Geodude, which is a very good encounter. This is great. The Alolan Graveler is very nice. Bulky Rock type is very useful for Misty Split, and even beyond that, you'll be using this a lot. Electric Rock, and it gets Magnet Pull, which is pretty incredible for late game. This is definitely something that you want to see. Next encounter I get Esper, which, well, it's not the worst encounter you can get here. It's better than Snover. Esper early game basically does nothing, but it evolves at level 25, so it evolves during Misty Split. So you can get some early game use out of it, it's just not insane. It does have the hidden ability Feline Prowess, which is basically special huge powers, but you only get that like after Lieutenant Surge, so I guess it becomes good later on. The final counter I get before the first gym is the egg, which I hatch in Pallet Town, and I hatch Execute, which is an interesting encounter. This thing does have Harvest, its hidden ability, which does make it better. It turns out that this thing ended up evolving into the Alolan Executor, which is useful sometimes. I would have really preferred a Kanto Executor. I think that's better. Alolan Executor is only better later on. The reason why is because Misty's team, being water type, they all have ice coverage. But now that I've got all my encounters, let's actually get into the really hard part of the game. This is when Brockatory really starts. So the first boss fight is Falkner, and this fight is extremely brutal and has a reputation for just ending runs outright, and is almost always going to be somewhat luck reliant. Usually I would lead off with Kricketune, and this can beat 3 mons, but I have another strategy. If you get Noctowl, you're in luck. The strat for this fight is to lead off with Noctowl, obviously. You go Timid Nature, which lets you outspeed some of the threats, and you go Wise Glasses so you can hit the damage ranges that you need. And you basically just spam Echoed Voice, and that is it. You Echoed Voice once, then you Echoed Voice again, doubling its power to 80 base power, and for some reason, I've done this several times now. When Noctowl uses its second Echoed Voice, the AI will always switch into Emolga for some reason, which is basically just a throw. This literally happens every single time. The best thing is that Noctowl, I'm pretty sure it always takes a Shockwave crit. Actually, yes, it does. It always takes a Shockwave crit from Emolga anyways. This will then bait in Rufflet, which you will absolutely destroy with, I think, 160 base power Echoed Voice. And then the Trumbeak has to take the full brunt of 200 base power Echoed Voice, which is pretty funny. And you do need the Timid Nature to outspeed it. Then comes in the 4th mon Yanma, which I'm pretty sure Noctowl can take a crit from this Yanma, which it actually would have taken it because it only took 17 damage from Ancient Power. Leaving the final mon that you need to deal with, Farfetch. Now this thing will outspeed Noctowl. So Noctowl was almost literally guaranteed to beat the first 4 mons as long as you don't get crit by Shockwave. All you need is to counter Farfetch. Now this Farfetch can actually be really annoying because my Chena and Kricketune really don't do anything to it. Thankfully, my Execute was just able to handle it with Side Beam, but you might have to dodge a crit in this depending on what your other mons are. A lot of the best early game mons are actually weak to fighting, so that is kind of rough, but at the very least, if you have Noctowl, you can basically destroy most of the mons in his team, so it's a really funny strat, and it is very consistent. I've done it myself. Now it's time for actual Brockatory, and Brock is a very rough boss fight. Even with the best of teams and the best of strats, there will be some amount of RNG, even a little bit. With Ivysaur Kricketune, my channel lead, the chances are in your favour, and I do have a somewhat consistent strat to at least give you a good chance of winning. So for the late Hippopotas, I like to go Modest Nature, Wise Glasses, Ivysaur, which will always kill the Hippopotas with Magical Leaf. Then it beats an Arcan, which will go for Plug. You can actually go Miracle Seed as well. This is where you need an Arcan counter. You can use like an Alolan Sandshrew or a Phanpy, but Gumshoes works. If you go Adamant Nature with Hard Rock, you could take the hits from Arcan and one-shot it with Rock Tomb. There is a chance that you could miss or you could get crits, so you will have to be very careful. Also make sure that Gumshoes is Adamant, otherwise the AI will switch out. I don't know why it just does that for some reason. This should always bait in Cacnea, especially because most of the Arcan counters are weak to fighting types. Ivysaur is pretty good against Cacnea. It won't one-shot Cacnea with Sludge though, unless you poison it. So what you would do is you will sludge the Cacnea because it will go for Power Up Punch. After 2 Power Up Punches, Ivysaur does not want to take Pin Missile, so you sludge the Cacnea once, putting it in red. Then you switch into a mon that has a priority move that can take Pin Missile, like Phanpy or Alolan Sandshrew, or a normal type with Quick Attack, or Mienfoo, which I use here. Is just basically its one early game use. Takes out the Cacnea. Now this baits in Lunatone, and this is where a Dark type is almost literally mandatory. I don't know if it's possible to beat Lunatone without a Dark type. Like, obviously it's possible, but consistently, doubt it. This thing has Ancient Power, and you just do not want to deal with this. Mychena can always 2-shot this, or if you're Strong Jaw, you actually just 1-shot it, but Sucker Punch is just really good for priority anyways. You just beat the Lunatone, and if it gets a boost, that could be kind of annoying, but this is where Dark types really shine. Next mon is Laleep, and this thing is really annoying, but this is why you really want Krigatun. Bug Bite does a lot of damage, and you can actually one-shot it like I did. Make sure that your Krigatun has a rock resisting berry, because Ancient Power is just really annoying in Laleep, and you could potentially just get screwed over if you get hit by the Ancient Power boost. This always leaves the final mon Sandshrew, and if Krigatun's at really good health, you could stay and just Mega Drain and beat it. I did have to dodge a crits, because unfortunately not that much can switch in on Sandshrew, but you should be fine after that. You might have to dodge a 1 or 2 or maybe 3 crits, but if you have the good mons, you can win this fight. Just make sure you plan for everything accordingly and you have an answer for everything. You might have to do a little bit of steering, maybe a little bit of crit dodging, but... So after that, let's carry on with this game. And no, this game does not really get easier. If anything, it gets harder. At the very least, the next encounter is really good. Nidoran, this is actually a very good mon. There are some bad encounters here like Stunky, which don't really see any early game play. And the good news is that the random trainers are complete cannon fodder. The only thing we need to worry about are the root bosses. So I go to the first root boss, and this trainer is actually extremely consistent with the mons that I reset for. Lead off with anything that can beat the lead Pikachu, like Gumshoe the Rock Tomb or something with Ice Shard. There's lots of different mons you can use for this, and then you basically win. Whimsicott can get hard countered by Ivysaur or other mons, that's really not an issue. Then Oricaru can be beaten by Sucker Punch Mightyena, and Mawile you could beat by, what I do is have Ivysaur just spam Mega Drain because Mawile can't damage it. Then when the Mawile is damaged, you can switch in Krigatun and go for Soft Sand Bulldoze. You don't want to Bulldoze when Mawile's at full health because it will see that happening and it will go for Metal Burst, which is basically just counter and it'll destroy your Krigatun. So make sure the Mawile is damaged first and in range. You really shouldn't have too much issue as long as you have a counter for each of the mons, which you should have. Now Route 4, there's no question about encounter. You always get the Magikarp from the vendor. Never get anything else other than this. And in Rock Tunnel, it's usually best to go into the basement to get an encounter. Ideally you get Paris, which I get, which I am pretty lucky. Paris is an excellent mon. It's a grass type, which is good for Misty. Has bug moves as well, which is good for certain mons like Starmie and Ludicolo. It's got a pretty good stat buff, it gets really good moves. And most importantly, this thing gets Dry Skin, which you will see for Misty, this thing's amazing. And it gets other great moves like Sappy Seed later on, so this is like one of the better Misty Split mons you could possibly get, it's very good. Next boss fight, the root boss right before the fossils, is this double battle. It's not too hard, you might have to dodge 1 or 2 crits, but that's basically it. My strat is to usually just lead up with Gyarados to intimidate, then Ivysaur. Gyarados will bait in the galvanized self-destruct from Voltorb, so switching to Mightyena, then Ivysaur can kind of just sit on the grass type. You need Mightyena in because this baits in Swoobat, which is the only real threat. You want your counter to Swoobat to be in already. This Swoobat has Grassy Seed with Simple, so it basically gets a +2 defense instantly, and it will use Simple Calm Mind, which is really dangerous. You want to take out the Swoobat as soon as possible. So make sure Mightyana's in when it comes out and have it bite and Sucker Punch the Swoobat. You'll probably need to go Adamant with Black Glasses, and ideally make sure your Ivysaur is not in the way of Swoobat because it might just attack it with a Psychic move. Noctowl's pretty good mon here because it's kind of bulky. The only thing you need to worry about is Mightyena potentially getting crits with like a U-turn or a boosted Grassy Glide. But once the Swoobat is taken down and Mightyena is swapped out for another mon, you basically win because the remaining 3 mons don't really do much. Ivysaur kind of destroys all of them, and even Noctowl here just does really well, but you shouldn't have too much issues. I think this is a pretty cool fight. It's hard, sort of, but it's not too hard. It requires you to some strategy. I think it's pretty neat. The next fight, Archer. This one has a reputation for being really gatekeepy. This is one fight that so many people wipe on. If you don't get the right encounters, you just auto lose this fight. His mons are incredibly threatening. He leads up with Solrock, and this thing is really dangerous. Ideally you would want some kind of rapid spinner, or you would want to bait out self-destruct on this because you don't really want to get hit by Stealth Rocks, but unfortunately I did not have an answer for this. I had to lead off with Mightyena and just go for Bite and Sucker Punch and just accept the fact that it was going to Stealth Rock me. It's Baron's a Viper, and this can be annoying, but luckily my channel was able to beat this, though it did have to dodge a crit. So, pretty good start because my channel was able to get 2 KOs. Next thing is Houndour, and this thing is okay. It is Focus Sash, and it likes to go for nasty plots. So you'll have to make sure you break the sash and switch something else and that can handle it. Nidoqueen actually does really good for beating it. This beats in Mightyena, and this is where Kricketune really shines for this fight. You switch in Kricketune and it just outspeed and one-shots the Mightyena with Bug Bite. The issue is this could potentially bait in Fearow, which is really rough. It's basically a random chance for the AI to just switch out. Now usually what I would do is I would give Kricketune a Flying Resist Berry, so it always takes a Technician Pluck from the Fearow. But because my Kricketune already took a hit from Mightyena, it's not going to take a Pluck. Usually Mightyena goes for Howl turn 1, but this time it didn't, it just attacked straight away. In situations like these, you basically have no choice but to dodge crits from the Fearow. It's too dangerous. You could intimidate it and dodge crits, but it's a really scary mon to go up against. Nidoqueen was able to Rock Tomb and Double Kick. Now I just have to deal with Mightyena, which is not going to be easy. Thankfully Gumshoes was able to beat it by using Rock Tomb in Headbutts, but this fight got really dicey. I could have easily wiped here. Usually I can beat this fight with moderate difficulty, but the AI was kind of predicting my plays, which can be somewhat random, so I basically got screwed here. But the good news is that after Archer, the next 3 boss fights until Misty do get a little bit easier. At least we get one more encounter until the next rival fight. I get the random egg. Hopefully it hatches into something good, and I get a Meowth. It's actually not bad. It evolves in the splits, it's got Technician Fake Out, it's really fast, it's fine. It gets Feline Prowess later on. Now, the next boss fight, and this can be extremely hard, is the next rival fight. But at this point, I've come up with strats that are pretty helpful for this fight, and you can actually use these strats yourself. So what I always lead off with, my go-to lead, is to always lead off with Gyarados first against its Hitmonlee, intimidate it, and it will always go for Fake Out. On Fake Out, I always switch in Kricketune with Adamant Nature and a Citrus Berry. Kricketune can always 2-shot this with Bulldoze, it'll just outspeed after the first Bulldoze. But for some reason, on the first or second Bulldoze, the AI will always, I tested this out, it will always switch in the Simisage for some reason. When Simisage takes the Bulldoze, you can outspeed and one-shot it with Bug Bite, and the AI never switches out for some reason, which is really good. Especially because the AI will switch Hitmonlee back in, which your Kricketune could just finish off, so your Kricketune basically gets 2 KOs instantly in a fight. You can't really use Kricketune for the rest of the fight, but because it 2-for-1'd, it's such a good trade-off. This can bait in Clefable, which can be a threat, but my way of dealing with it is to switch in Ivysaur. You might need to bait out a fairy move so it comes in on that. Ivysaur can maybe go for Sleep Powder, which is risky, or you could go for Sludge, which I would recommend. Then once it takes a Sludge, it'll be about half health, so you'll have to find a way to pivot in Mightyena safely. You can go into Gyarados on the Icy Wind, then bait Electric move, go into Mightyena. Then Mightyena can Poison Fang and finish it off. The Clefable is pretty threatening, but the best strat is basically Ivysaur Sludge, pivot to Mightyena, Poison Fang, beat it. After that, there's still more threats in this fight. He's got 6 mons, which is wild. Arbok is really scary. I had to pivot between Gyarados and Nidoqueen, which was kind of annoying, and use Mightyena. I had to dodge crits in this. This Arbok is really dangerous. Thankfully, Nidoqueen was able to handle that Arbok, and for some reason, the AI just completely flew. The AI switched EV in on my superpower and got destroyed by it. This EV is on absolute steroids. It's got EV-inium Z, which gives it +2 in every stat. That thing's a big threat. But the AI just completely threw it away for some reason. And now Arbok is weakened, so I can take that out. The only threat I need to worry about is Charmeleon. Now this thing, its stats aren't insane. It's a physical set. but it does like to spam Dragon Dance. Thankfully, Graveler can handle it, but you might need to dodge a crit in it. It has Fire Punch and Thunder Punch, so you can use Gyarados to kind of like pivot around and intimidate. This fight can be kind of sketch, but it is a pretty difficult fight, I won't lie, so you will need some luck. This next Team Rocket boss fight only has 4 mons, but they could be a bit tricky, but there is a way to deal with them. This Arcanine has Thunderfang and Dragon Rage, which is kind of scary, but the best strat is to lead off with Gyarados to intimidate it, and to absorb the Arcanine's Intimidate. And this will always bait Thunderfang, so ideally you'd switch into a ground type. Nidoqueen is really good here. Then try to beat it 1v1. I just spammed Rock Tomb, and I had enough HP to take the Dragon Rages. So you can take it out that way. Druddigon is a bit annoying. This thing is a stall set, so you'll need some way to beat it. Ivysaur's pretty good because this Druddigon really likes to go for Toxic and just spam it, so Ivysaur's a pretty good switch in. And you could put it to sleep or poison it yourself, which I ended up doing. But just keep playing around the Druddigon, intimidating it, switching around. One really good strat that you could do is if you have a Fairy type and a Steel type, you could switch around between Poison move and Dragon move until Druddigon just gets completely PP stalled and can't do anything. I didn't do that this run, but I would recommend doing that. If you have like Alolan Sandshrew and Azumarill, which you could reset for at the start of the game, you could just PP stall this Druddigon. Noctowl also works pretty well here. Now, Togedemaru, my strat to beat this was to pivot around a little bit, then go into Krigatune, then use Bulldoze and beat it that way. You should be fine if you switch Krigatune in on Zippy Zap, because you could just one-shot it in return. Now the Komala, this is the real threat of this fight. This Komala has 2 moves. It has Silk Scarf. It's got Protect and Last Resort. If you know what that move does, you know why this thing is an absolute threat. If you have a Ghost type, you basically meme on this. If you don't have a Ghost type, you might have to dodge some crits. You better have a good Rock or Steel type, or at the very least, you better be using your Chilin Berries. This thing is absolutely ludicrous. Even Rock types probably have to dodge crits on this. It's a huge threat. I had to dodge crits to beat this thing, which is kind of unfortunate. If you do have a Fighting type, you can beat it because it always goes for Protect turn 1. So you could like switch in Chilin Berry Breloom, for example, but it just depends on what you have. It's a stupidly powerful mon for this point of the game. But after that, the fight is pretty much over, and the good news is I get 2 more encounters before the next boss fight. I get Cottony, which on hardcore mode, this is literally considered one of the most meta relevant mons, so if you get this, consider yourself lucky. It's a fast Fairy type, which gets Encore, which is a really powerful move. Fast Grass type is also pretty good for the next 2 gyms, so there's that as well. In the next route, right underneath Bill's house, you always fish up for the Chinchou encounter. You have the Gyarados dupe, so you're guaranteed Chinchou, and it's always going to have Volt Absorb until you swap its abilities later on. You need this mon. Chinchou is one of the most meta relevant mons in the game as well. Now, the final boss fight before Misty is the Dig Grunt, and this is also considered a big gatekeeper early game. This trainer leads off with Alolan Persian, which has Feeling Prowess, doubling its special attack. It's a really fast mon with base 80 Dark Pulse at this point in the game, which is really strong, and it's got Black Glasses. You don't want to mess with this Persian. You really need to have some kind of good fighting type that can handle it, or a Fairy type. I had Whimsicott, which resists all of its moves, but it does not have a Fairy move, so I had to use Giga Drain. I was able to beat this Persian 1v1, but I had to potentially dodge a flinch, which is really annoying. But the Crobat is a really big issue. That thing is really annoying. The AI does switch around and then goes into Octillery. Octillery you can beat with Ivysaur. What you do is you bait in Bullet Seed, so Ivysaur comes in on the Octillery, takes the Bullet Seed like no damage. Then you always 2-shot the Octillery with Mega Drain. With Citrus Berry, you take the Rock Blast, and Mega Drain will just heal up all the damage that you took, so Octillery is not an issue. Crobat is an issue though. In this, you basically have to dodge crits on. This mon is Sniper with Scope Lens and has high crit moves like Cross Poison. It's also got coverage options like Mega Drain, Hidden Power, Fire. Lantern is usually my option for this, but it will have to dodge a crit. It's a really obnoxious mon and not much can handle it. Lantern, ideally you could Thunder Wave it or you could try to 2-shot it with Shockwave, but I guess a backup would be switching in Gyarados to Intimidate it and Ice Fang it, but even that's not a safe strategy. Now, the final mon that you have to deal with is Raticate. And this thing is really scary. It's got Guts Facade, which is pretty insane at this point in the game. +1, 140 base power stab move. You don't want to be dealing with that. My strat was to pivot between Gyarados to Intimidate it. You switch in the bulky Rock type to take the Facade. This will bait out Stomping Tantrum, which Gyarados is immune to, stall out a little bit of burn and Intimidate it again. You can do this until Raticate is really low in attack and take some good burn damage, then probably dodge a crit and take it out. Ideally you would use your Chilling Berry to safely take a Facade from this Raticate on your Gyarados. If you have like a bulky mon like I guess Nidoqueen or Donphan that can safely take a hit with Chilling Berry and take out the Raticate, but you might have dodged a crit depending on what you have. Thankfully I did not get unlucky and I beat this fight and I am still completely flawless, which I'm pretty happy about. This fight is not to be taken lightly. At least we still get some more encounters before Misty. I get Alolan Vulpix, which basically does nothing until after Lieutenant Surge because you need Ice Stone, but it can be useful. Fairy types are always nice to have. The last encounter I get before Misty is a Bounsweet. It's a pretty good mon when it evolves. Unfortunately, it evolves at level 29, which is above the level cap. That is not very PogChamp. Now it's time for Misty, and this fight is just not pleasant at all. So I didn't have a great strat for this Misty fight. What I did is I led off with Whimsicott, tried to Giga Drain the Politoed and see what it does. It instantly flip turns into Ferroseed. And this is where the problems start. This Ferroseed has Eviolite and it's in the rain, which by the way this fight has permanent rain. It's just as a field effect. Even though the Politoed has Drizzle, it doesn't even matter. Rain will never run out in this fight, so you just have to deal with it. This Ferroseed is bulky, it has really annoying status moves like Leech Seed and Toxic, and is extremely hard to one-shot. Even fire types don't one-shot it that much, unless it's like a really powerful mon, like a few exceptions. My only chance of beating it was with Nidoqueen, with superpower, and that ended up not even working, which is really unfortunate. I kind of miscalculated how much damage it did, and it ended up going down. At least I was able to take out the Ferroseed afterwards. Losing Nidoqueen is my first loss. It kind of hurt. Nidoqueen is a pretty solid mon, good typing and defense, and I would have really liked to have used this, but to be fair, only having one loss is pretty good. So it happens. Honestly, you're going to lose a mon sooner or later in this game, and it is a learning experience. I'm still improving my strats to this day, but at least the Ferroseed is in the red, so something else can just finish it off. Toxicroak is a pretty powerful mon with Sword Stance, but Gyarados can almost always switch in, Bulldoze, with Adamant Nature, you lower its speed and you Bulldoze it again and take it out. Gyarados will always bait in Stormy, try and go for Thunderbolt, so the strat is, you beat the Thunderbolt, you switch in your guaranteed Volt Absorb Lantern, then that will bait in Psychic move, so you can switch in Mychena. I mean, this time it switched out, but ideally Mychena would just take it from Stormy and go for Strong Jaw Crunch and take it out. You get ability pills by this point in the game, so you can change the abilities to get what you need. Ludicolo is pretty annoying, but thankfully I had the Parasect, which counters Ludicolo. That is really fortunate. It's still pretty strong though. You will need something like maybe Yache or Citrus Berry to handle it. Actually, I think Yachi Berry is the play on Parsect. But Dry Skin is so good. It's basically Water Absorb that also heals you every turn. Once the Ludicolo goes down, the rest of the fight is a bit easier. Mantine is very scary with Swift Swim and Hurricane, but Lantern can usually handle it. You could Thunder Wave it, then 2-shot it with Shockwave. I would recommend just double Shockwaving it straight away. I did have to use my Chenna to take out the Mantine, because I wasted a turn going for Thunder Wave, which I shouldn't have done. But fortunately, my Chenna was just able to take a Scald from the Starmie and take it out. You really want your Chenna to be at full health. Make sure it's got a Rossberry and probably go Careful Nature. Politoed should be the last one to come out after it flip turns, and this should be easy pickings for Gyarados. At this point it's not that much of a threat, and because Ferrothorn is in the red, that's not really an issue either. So the fight's over, and I lost one Mon. Nidoqueen would have been really nice to keep. But honestly, I'm just happy that I got past Misty with only one loss. This was a personal record for me, and the thing is, this was like my second time ever doing Misty in this game. This game does have a big learning curve, I will say. Well, the good news is the level cap is 36, so we can evolve a lot of mons like Venusaur. That's pretty good. This next boss fight that we have to do before Lieutenant Surge is really annoying. I just hate this fight. It's a double battle, and there's 5 mons and are all really powerful. You almost always need to dodge crits in this. I'm not going to go over everything that happened because this fight took forever to do. Ideally, what I would recommend is try to keep using your Gyarados to intimidate mons. You could bait out the Thunder Punch and Thunder Fang from Boltund and Granbull, so you could pivot between like Gyarados and Lantern and keep intimidating the opponents and use your other slot to attack. But this is a difficult fight because it's a double battle this early on in the game. It's pretty hard to plan for effectively, so you just need to use the mons that you have and try to take the fight one turn at a time. Thankfully, I was able to beat this fight without any losses, but it really could have gone either way. I'm just thankful to have gotten past that fight. At least we get 2 more encounters before the next boss fight. I get an egg in Vermilion City, and you can also fish up a mon. I hatch the egg on Essesan. Make sure you hatch it there as it's its own area. And I get a Furfrou, which is... it's okay, I guess. Its stats are like slightly buffed, and it's got Fur Coat, which is pretty good. It's just a flat double defense ability. I can fish up and I get Shelter, which is a really good mon. Cloyster with battle armor is pretty great to have. After this, the run is in a weird spot because there's several branching paths you can take. You can go to fight Lieutenant Surge now, or you can go to fight Brendan, and when you beat Brendan you get access to a few items and an extra encounter, but Brendan is extremely hard. Or you can go towards Rock Tunnel and get 2 encounters and a bunch of items. I chose to go towards Rock Tunnel first. I kind of like this idea of branching paths, where you can try to progress the main plot, or you can kind of go through other paths first, taking risks and fighting other boss fights that are optional, but you do get rewarded for doing so. So it's a pretty nice like risk-reward trade-off. This trainer I fight here, which is the route boss that you have to fight to enter this route to get any encounters, has 4 powerhouses. I get to use my Meowistic and it takes out this lead Roserade, which is kinda neat. But this trainer is pretty rough. The Chattel has Boom Burst and Chatter. This thing is really scary. If you have Cheelan Berry, it will start using Chatter. In the fight, definitely got a little bit RNG reliance. The Flareon also has Guts, Facade, and Sacred Fire, which is incredibly powerful. I had to dodge a few crits, but I was able to get past this fight. My Chenna did save me really hard in the end. It dodged a crit and finished off the Chattel with Sucker Punch. That was really rough. It's pretty hard to plan for some of these fights. You basically just have to go with what you have, and you usually just have to accept that you have to dodge some crits. Maybe in the future I'll be able to like fine tune my strats a little bit better, but this is... I've never been through this part of the game before, so it's still a learning process for me. At least I get more encounters. I get in DD, which is not bad. Obviously, because this is hardcore mode, it no longer gets access to Psychic Surge, which is unfortunate, but it's still a pretty solid mon. In Route 9, I think like the route above Rock Tunnel, you can go for Grass to get a fast Electric type, but what I would recommend, especially in restricted mode, you fish up and you get a guaranteed Remoraid. Now, Octillery is not a good mon, it gets Mega Launcher in Octazooka, but Remoraid is good because it guarantees Slowbro later on, and if you've seen people play this game at the Elite Four, you will know that Slowbro is one of the best mons in the entire game, especially Mega Slowbro. Then the last encounter I get before Lieutenant Surge's Sneasel, I can't go past Rock Tunnel because there is a incredibly powerful root boss and I don't know how to handle them. I mean, you could go past Rock Tunnel now and try to make your way towards Celadon City, but I don't think I would recommend doing that before Lieutenant Surge. The boss fights are ludicrously powerful. Speaking of boss fights, there's even more boss fights you have to do. Before Lieutenant Surge, you have to fight a boss fight in his gym, which is just taking things to the next level. Even gyms now have boss fights in them, and things only just get harder from here. This trainer leads off with an Alakazam. Make sure you have your Mychena, which is pretty good for this. Choppleberry, you can just crunch and sucker punch it. And then there's this Morpeko, and I could have beaten this, but I forgot how the move Aura Wheel worked. I forgot that Aura Wheel turns into a dark type attack, and it destroyed my Venusaur, making it my second loss, which was very unfortunate. I was pretty salty about that. That should not have happened. I could have just switched in Mychena into the Dark Aura Sphere, the Aura Wheel, but it is what it is. To be fair, my luck did kind of balance out. Like, the Pikachu is easy to beat, but I got really lucky against his Download Porygon Z with a special attack buff from Download. Furfrou was somehow able to beat this Porygon Z 1v1 after it got paralyzed, because I think it got paralyzed twice in a row, so I really lucked out. I could have lost Furfrou as well, so thank God I didn't. The final mon is Farfetch, and this Farfetch is really scary. It has Cut, which is a pretty strong seal move, in Braid Bird, and it has Blade Master 2 with Sacred Sword, and it's now a Fighting type. It has the Leak Stick, which increases critical hit rate and makes it 50% faster, essentially making it +1 speed. This Farfetch is really hard to handle. Thankfully, Battle Armor Cloyster with Choppleberry is able to beat it, but it's still nothing to scoff at. Lieutenant Surge is a pretty tricky boss fight. Well, not really. His mons are incredibly powerful, but there is an exploit that actually makes him the easiest gym leader yet. And this basically revolves around using Lantern, which you will need. Volt Absorb will absolutely carry you through this fight. This boss fight has pretty big powerhouses with permanent electric terrain, which is quite threatening, but you can use this to your advantage. It's pretty funny. Use TM Flip Turn that you get from Misty, basically allowing you to slow U-turn into whatever you want. So for Lieutenant Surge's lead dead end, the good thing is that a plus special defense nature Lantern can tank Deden's attacks pretty well. So Deden will attack, Lantern will flip turn into Gyarados, that will bait an electric move, so you just switch back in your Lantern, Volt Absorb will heal up almost all the damage that you took, and you just rinse and repeat until you could just KO the Deden, then just flip turn into another mon of your choice. Another thing that you can really abuse is Eerie Impulse, and this is really good because in electric terrain, which is permanent in this fight, the opponent's mon's special attack stat goes down by 2 stages, and this is very good. You can basically use this to just weaken any special attacker, and the best thing about that is that in this game, the way the AI works is if a Pokemon's main attacking stat is down by 2 stages or more, the AI will almost always switch that mon out. So if you Eerie Impulse a special attacker like Mega Manectric, that will cause the AI to usually switch out, so you can use flip turn to basically slow pivot after the AI switches out, so you can switch in the mon that you want to counter what they have. So it's a really good strategy. The AI switches out into Electivire on my Lantern, and it's actually pretty good because Electivire is one of the very few mons that Lantern cannot beat, and I can use my counter for it. I know that Electivire will go for close combat because it's the strongest move, so I switch in Meowistic, which usually does not one-shot it, but because it just went for close combat and lowered its defense, I can Psyshock it and KO it. This baits in Deden again, which just baits electric move, go back to Lantern, heal yourself up. You KO the Deden with flip turn, and then you just go into another mon. Meowistic is really good because it is fake out. This ends up being a perfect scenario because after I KO Deden with flip turn, I go into Meowistic, Alolan Raichu comes out, and this thing is kind of a threat, and you're going to need some answers for this. This thing has a Surge Surfer, which makes it ludicrously fast. It's got Nasty Plot, and it also has Focus Sash, so you cannot one-shot this. Ideally, you would use Meowistic to fake out, which I do. Then after that, Meowistic will bait out either Nasty Plot or Electric move, so you can just go into Lantern. Then Lantern will always bait in a Psychic move or Nasty Plot. So I switch in my Tiana, so it'll take no damage. And because Raichu has been fake outed and its sash is broken, you could just Sucker Punch it and I will always KO it, which is awesome. This now beats in Manectric, and surprise surprise, Rising Voltage in electric terrain is its strongest move, so it will go for that, so Lantern can beat it pretty easily. You can go for Eerie Impulse to lower its special attack by 2 stages, and because its special attack is lowered, this will make the AI switch out, and I can flip turn. So the AI switches in Hitmonlee, which is what I want, because Hitmonlee is another one of those mons that Lantern cannot handle. So I flip turn the Hitmonlee, get a little bit of damage, and switch out into a mon that I think can handle it. Now, I didn't have a good answer for this, but I did have Indeedee, and thankfully Indeedee was able to beat this. Hitmonlee could use close combat and it could use knockoff too, but I did have a dark resisting berry. Hitmonlee, when it bulk ups, it's incredibly dangerous. It's a pretty scary mon, especially because it has Electric Seed, which raises its, I think it's defense in electric terrain. It also triggers its Unburden, so after one bulk up, Hitmonlee is going to be incredibly fast, pretty bulky, and incredibly strong as well, but thankfully Indeedee was able to one-shot it. This beats in Rotom Wash, and this thing was really scary. I had a lot of trouble against this. I didn't really know what to do with this. I misplayed really badly. I used Eerie Impulse to lower its special attack by 2, but it kept spamming Nasty Plot in return to increase its special attack by 2, basically cancelling it out. The issue is, at this rate I was going to run out of Eerie Impulse PP, so it was going to start setting up. This was pretty scary, and I kind of panicked and switched in Whimsicots, which went down to 1 Hidden Power Ice, which was really tilting. I kind of misplayed and just assumed Lantern would be able to beat this, which it turned out it actually did. Even at like +4, this was barely doing any damage to Lantern, but it was a big misplay. I should have put Yache Berry on Whimsicott. I think that's what I would recommend. A fast grass type with Yache Berry can in fact take the Hidden Power Ice and 2-shot the Rotom Wash. I should have done that, but you know what? 1 loss, it's not the end of the world. Beating this gym with 3 losses overall, it's still manageable. This is because the final mon is Mega Manectric, and you could just Eerie Impulse to make its special attack really low. You could always take 1 or 2 Hidden Power Grasses from Manectric. Because its special attack is really low and it can't switch out, you could just switch in Gyarados and just go back into Lantern, and that'll just keep healing up your health. And because it's been Eerie Impulsed, its special attack's going to be pretty low, so you can just keep doing that until the Mega Manectric goes down. And that's pretty much that. I did misplay against a Rotom Wash, but basically Gyarados plus Lantern Pivot beats at least half his team. Make sure you have an answer for Electivire, Hitmonlee and Rotom Wash, and you basically just win this fight. But yeah, I could have done better, but at the same time, beating Lieutenant Surge on my first try with only 1 loss, that's fine. Now after that, there's a lot more to do. There is Brendan, which I don't want to fight, because he's a pretty scary boss battle, so I'll just make my way towards Lavender Town. Now to get past Rock Tunnel, we have to fight a boss fight. And you thought the boss fights in this game, the root bosses, were crazy? You haven't seen anything yet. This game only gets harder and harder, and the boss fights get stronger and stronger. Picnicker Diana, 5 mons. This fight is ludicrous. Okay, Rabombi lead. I can fake out and power gem. Beat it that way. Okay, this beats in flipping Buffalont. This thing has head charge, a 120 base power stab move with Silk Scarf, and it has the ability Bull Rush. In case you didn't know, Bull Rush is basically the ability of the first turn a Pokemon comes in, its speed is increased by 50%, and its attack is increased by 20%, but it's only for the first turn that Pokemon is in. But now that Buffalont's in, it has the Bull Rush activated. It's an absolute powerhouse, and even resisted rock types are going to take humongous damage from this. This thing is not to be taken lightly at all. It's ridiculously strong, and almost nothing can reliably wall it. Gyarados can intimidate it, and its Chillin' Berry is already gone. Graveler can switch in on the head charges, but it's going to have to switch out on the earthquakes. I can somewhat pivot around, but I can't take that many head charges from this. Eventually Gyarados will go down, and this Buffalon is so bulky. Just when it looked like my Cloyster was able to beat this Buffalon with battle armor, the AI switched out into Clawitzer, and this is a mon that I kind of sort of forgot to prepare for, so this is when things really just started to go off the rails here. Lantern could kind of beat this 1v1 with Parabolic Charge. It still wasn't easy at all. I was able to beat this Clawitzer, but I could have gotten KO'd had I got another flinch. And now Buffalont comes back in, and now his Bull Rush has been activated again. I had no choice but to just dodge multiple crits because this thing is so monstrous. Literally nothing in my box can handle this. The only way I can maybe beat this is by intimidating it a few times without getting KO'd, switching Cloyster with battle armor, which can get crit, then KO it that way, but it's still not a very viable strategy. You're going to need to have some really good pivots to do that. It's not easy at all. But you thought this Buffalon was scary. Now it's a flipping Rampardos. A Rampardos with 150 base power head smash, which nothing in my box can counter this at all. Every single mon in my box gets one-shotted or two-shotted. I think majority just get flat out one-shotted. One of the only mons I have that actually resists head smash is Mienshao. It can take the head smash, it has a dodge of crits. So I'm like, okay, I can beat this. But this thing has the move Accelerock, a priority rock move, and it does do enough to kill Mienshao. It got a good roll. So my quote-unquote counter to Rampardos is down. And from the looks of it, I am completely screwed. Cloyster was able to outspeed and take it out. It still took a lot of damage from Accelerock. But this baits in the final mon in arguably the most dangerous mon in his team, Magmortar. This thing has a buff speed stat, and it has a buffed moveset, giving it moves like Dark Pulse and Aura Sphere, and it gets the ability Mega Launcher, making this a complete powerhouse that's really hard to wall out. This thing two-shots almost everything in the game that you can get at this point. It's ridiculously powerful, and it sweeps my team. I have no way of beating this at all. Even Persian is not able to KO with Power Gem and just goes down. This thing is absolutely ludicrous, outspeeds and destroys everything. Honestly, I don't think I had too much of a chance in this fight anyways. I didn't really prepare enough for it. Honestly, I could have prepared a bit more. But you know what? Even then, looking at my box, I don't think I had any monster counter this anyways. And that's basically what this game boils down to. The boss fights are all just box checks, where if you don't have the counters to the boss fights, they will just end your run. If you don't have a good counter for Magmortar and Rapardos, they will just sweep your team. You'll have to at least sack some mons for them, which is really rough. But that's just how this game is. Yeah, the run just ended. This game is absolutely ludicrous. It is fun though, I won't lie, I did enjoy this game. But you know, the positives about this game is that I have gotten a lot better. When I first started playing this game, first started attempting Nuzlocke this, I couldn't even get past the first gym leader, no matter how hard I tried. I could not get past the first gym leader. Now I can get past Lieutenant Surge with minimal losses, and I'm at least starting to figure out good strategies, and hopefully I've taught some of you guys some good strategies for early game. I'm still learning more to this day, and I'm sure I'll get past this eventually. This game has been beaten, so it is possible, it's just extremely hard. So, that pretty much concludes the run. Expect more Radical Red content to come, and just more content in general. Please like, comment, subscribe, because YouTube is like a flipping full-time job that I don't get paid for yet, and yeah, there's a lot of work that went into this video. This is the first time I made a video without a script. I basically just narrated this video unscripted, so you might have noticed that the commentary is a little bit different. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. It's kind of a skill that I need to work on. But Radical Red Hardcore mode, it's a fun game. It's a pretty fast game to play. This run literally took me like 4 hours to do. But yeah, you're going to need to really go all out and not hold back for this. It will test your abilities in a Nuzlocke. I hope you like Radical Red and are looking forward to more content like my restricted mode run where I made it to the champion. And that's pretty much it. I will see you all next time. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.